You gonna pop that open again?
That is the crisp sound of a Boddington pub ale. Because
where does a Boddington stand on the beer scale?
Yeah, from 1 to trash, it's absolute garbage. But we're drinking it because George Russell won the Belgian Grand Prix.
Did he?
No, he didn't. But Lewis Hamilton took his place after his disqualification. We're choosing the 1/3 of his British nationality. So we're going to drink this because it was Spa, and it is such an incredible racetrack that produced one of the most boring races of 2024 season.
A very, very disappointing race. I expected with the weather change for there to be so much overtaking, Max to charge through. I expected there to be just all these question marks around who's going to win. And it produced question marks. I didn't expect a Mercedes 1-2, but there was no overtaking.
No overtaking.
Literally no overtaking.
It was a weekend of mysteries. We did not expect what the outcome. We did not expect this
Ferrari
outcome.
Didn't expect
at
to be at
all.
pole.
We did not expect it. We're going to jump into all of this.
Oh yeah.
Max's battle from P11 to Sergio's drop from P2. For Lando making the mistakes to Piastri being the cool, calm cucumber he always is. This is F1 Rolling Start, and we're here to talk all things F1.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, if you're listening to us right now, go ahead and subscribe, like us, send us a message. We'd love to engage with you, get to hear from you and all of your love for Formula One as well. But Russell wins.
Russell, can I just say this? Russell, you last week, you said Russell needed to go into the summer with some wind at his back, wind in his wings, whatever.
The 7-time world champion was breathing down his neck.
And you're like, this guy needs a win, and he gets the win. Incredibly so. He does a one-stop strategy.
Rolls the dice.
Belgian Grand Prix. No one's doing a one-stop. He just says, I'm going to stay out. And there's a moment where I was like, Russ, you're so out of touch with reality.
Because Russ does this. Russ does this. He loves the crazy roll the dice type strategy. He's like, the tires feel good. And like, half the time we're all like, bro.
I was like, Russ, you have like 27 more laps. What do you mean the tires feel good? You're going to do a one-stop. But he ends up doing a one-stop. Hamilton can't get past. He wins only to have...
hours later. After the podium, after the praise of being a wily little fox with his strategy,
everyone's like, "You're a genius. Whose idea was this?" And he's like, "Well, I mean, yeah."
The strategists were saying that give another 2, maybe 3 laps, and Hamilton would have overtaken him, and possibly even Piastri, because Piastri was charging at the end of the race.
I mean, it was brilliant on his part. Unfortunately, dreadful on the part of whoever the heck at Mercedes forgot to drain all the fuel before it was weighed. There went from whatever role they had at the weekend to being somewhere in the factory for the next 6 months.
Yeah, from lead engineer to lead janitor. It's
definitely
Toto
is like, this was my fault. This is our, just going straight to whoever's fault that actually was and being like, goodbye, you're done. We're never going to see you again. It was a rare mistake in that way from Mercedes, who has won 3 out of the last 4 races.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just brutal for Russ. I mean, really no other way to say it. I mean, heartbreaking.
He finishes the race, the 2 hours he spent in the cockpit, physically grueling race.
Oh, yeah.
You heard even Max and Hamilton over the radio, the team radio, and they were they sounded exasperated. They sounded exhausted.
Well, like you said, there's like before we started recording. There's like 4 braking zones
Yeah.
in the entire race.
The rest of it's flat out.
Oh, and you can't pass because everyone's just going, 200 miles an hour the entire time.
Yeah. And just to have at the end of the race that be taken away from you, before the stewards even dropped the hammer on Mercedes, Toto was already bracing for impact as the team director. He said, massive blow for George. And in my head, I'm like, massive blow. No, you just took his 3rd Grand Prix win. This is not like Hamilton losing a win. This is
the guy's got
George.
200 podiums.
201 now.
Yeah.
So, this is a fatal era. Like they said, it's a learning experience. Just weigh the damn car. I mean, it's not really a learning experience. Just do your job. How does Mercedes make a mistake like this?
It's amateur. We don't have a mistake like this being made from other teams in the past several years. We haven't had someone disqualified because of this. We'd have to go back and fact check and see when the last time this actually happened. But obviously Mercedes was disqualified.
I think it was Sebastian Vettel remember when he pulled the car over? He pulled I think he had placed, and then Aston Martin was like, pull the car over, turn it off. Because I think they were freaking out about the weight. Do you remember that? That was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been a couple years ago.
And I think that might have been the last time someone got disqualified because of weight. Like, it's not a common thing.
No.
And it was a total fluke of a mistake.
Yeah.
But it cost them a ton of points.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's not like they were finishing in 8th or 9th. It's not like Haas made this mistake or Alpine made this mistake.
No, wouldn't have mattered.
Or Kick made this mistake. But it's like it's Mercedes. Matter. Mercedes doesn't make these mistakes. This is Mercedes. We are a well-oiled machine. They do not make these kind of mistakes.
No, I mean, they had a 1-2. They had a massive haul of points. They are, at this point, they're gunning for Ferrari. They're still a whiles back, but they have been scoring at an incredible pace over the last several races. And then to have this blow is huge. It's absolutely huge. So, I mean, I guess my question is, if you're a Toto, maybe put on your leadership hat for a second, and the team makes this big of an error. How do you repair that kind of, I don't want to say damaged, but this is his 3rd win.
Yeah.
This is a big deal. Mm-hmm. He puts his heart and soul on the track. He brings it home, and the team is the one that's responsible for being taken away.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of layered responses there in regards to George. For me, I look at his performance this year, and he's, aside from being disqualified this weekend, which is not his fault, he's slugging it out with a 7-time world champion, and he's doing a great job.
Yeah.
I think if you were to look at the current silly season, imagine if it was George and Carlos out of a seat for next year, George would be a massive contender based off of his performance. He would be way up there with the signs of this driving class. Now, I don't know if he's up there with Max level talent, Norris level talent, but I think he could be very competitive. And so I think for him, he's like, dude, how did this happen to me? How did this happen to the guy that you've decided to stick with for the next few years, to bring up the Kimi Antonelli that you bring into this team to groom him, and you hang me out there to dry, or rather you hung me out there dry because I didn't have any fuel left.
Yeah. No, that's really well said. I mean, obviously he is their leading man moving forward in the next year. And the team just, again, it's rare that they made this mistake, but you can't make these mistakes.
No.
Especially when the field is this tight, when it's McLaren, when it's Red Bull, when it's now Mercedes. Ferrari's still hanging around there too. You can't make these mistakes. If every millisecond counts, quoting Mercedes, on the side of their, bus that they've got, if every millisecond counts, every ounce of fuel counts.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Weigh the car. You just can't make these kind of mistakes because the the results are absolutely catastrophic if you make a mistake like this. And we saw that today.
And some would say that, well, that's an unfair and unrealistic expectation. Well, no, it's not, because this is the pinnacle of motor racing. This is the 20 teams in the entire world.
We're not
like the
slugging
10
it out
teams,
in
the 20
F2.
drivers.
This is F1.
Exactly. This is F1. You chose to be here. This is the standard. So rise to it.
Yeah.
And for the most part, Mercedes does not make these kind of mistakes.
True.
But on the weekend and in the season where they need to, and they are experiencing the big momentum through all of the changes that they've been doing, these kind of mistakes will and can haunt you towards the end of the season, because they would, instead of being 120-ish points behind Red Bull now, they'd be sub 100 points behind Red Bull at this point in time.
And remember,
that's
last
a big
season as well, them and Ferrari were fighting tooth and nail to the very
down to
end,
a point,
the very last, very last race. So I mean, it's going to be the same this year because the field is that tight. So it was a huge detriment, obviously, today, a huge heartbreak for us. But Hammy got his second win
and
this season.
And the only driver other than Max Verstappen over the last few years to get 2 wins within one season.
Yeah, wow.
Pretty crazy, right?
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So
interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And that wow pretty much sums up this entire weekend. This is the weirdest weekend. We're talking about Mercedes on pace, winning first and second place. On Friday, if you would have told me that, I would have bet my house against you. Because they were nowhere.
You have a very expensive house, too.
Yeah.
We're both renters.
Yeah. And they were nowhere over the weekend.
Really.
And admittedly, they were nowhere. Both drivers were frustrated. The team was frustrated. The engineers were frustrated.
And Red Bull had pace.
Red Bull was crushing
Unreal
it.
pace.
Lando was crushing it. We were going into this, and Ferrari didn't look bad.
No.
We were going into this weekend going, oh, maybe Mercedes isn't back. And then we get like a P3 on Saturday and qualifying in the rain, and the race is in the sun. So no one cares about what was shown there. No. And then all of a sudden, Sunday morning rolls around and Hamilton's leading the race.
Yeah. That was surprising. I did not expect that whatsoever. If I'm honest, and maybe this is me being a little optimistic or overly optimistic for Checo, I thought Checo had a chance.
So did I. I wanted Checo to win.
I was like, well, Ferraris, they don't got pace. They were stunned they had pole position. They were like, oh, that's a nice surprise. And I'm like, Checo, come on, boy. You got this.
You got this.
You've got the Red Bull. You're in P2. You don't want to be starting P1 anyway. Mm-hmm. This is a track where you want to be in P2. And after a couple of laps, I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, Checo on the first lap thought he had it. If you look at the replay between Checo and Hamilton on the first lap, Checo literally moves over to get into Leclerc's slipstream, expecting Hamilton to not be there, to the point where Hamilton's like, dude, what the heck? And like jigs the steering wheel to the right. And then all of a sudden, the reason why Leclerc in P1 could stay ahead is because Hamilton and Perez were fighting, and Hamilton comes out on top. Yeah. And Perez that was the beginning of the end for Perez. He dropped from P2 all the way down to finish in P8. I believe he takes P7 after.
He took P7
after Russell's disqualification. He took
fastest lap as well.
He pitted. He got fastest lap, but
was that just like, we'll give you a fastest lap thing before you're no longer part of the team?
Okay, literally.
Here's one, extra little thing. Not that I want to pivot to Red Bull, but we're talking about Checo.
I mean, might as well. I mean, I think Max.
Is
here's
this
the thing.
Last race with Red Bull? I know it's a massive question. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
I believe this will be the last race that Checo drives with Red Bull. I believe that tomorrow morning, when Helmut Marko and Christian Horner and the team meets, that they will decide to either put Liam Lawson or Daniel Ricciardo in that Red Bull seat.
Because they're both testing.
Because they're both testing this week. And it's perceived to be some sort of like a Red Bull shootout testing between the two of them. And I think they'll put him in that seat, and they'll pull an Albon/Gasly situation that they did, and they'll see who sinks or swim. Leading into this weekend, Do you know who has the most amount? There were 3 drivers with the most amount of Q3 knockouts: Guan Yu Zhou, Logan Sargent,
and Checo Perez.
Is that acceptable for a Red Bull driver?
Absolutely not.
So
you cannot be in the same sentence as a Kick and Williams driver.
You can't be in the same sentence as
you
can be in the same sentence as Albon on a good weekend. You cannot be in the same sentence as Guan Yu Zhou and Logan Sargent. It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
Unless you're combining those scores. And even then, no, you can't be in the same sentence. There's no reason for him. And Red Bull has no reason to keep him. They've done, to be honest, I kind of want the savage Red Bull back. Red Bull has lost its teeth.
And obviously there's internal fighting and turmoil that still seems a bit unresolved at Red Bull, which I wonder is why.
But on the surface, it's turned a Rottweiler into a Yorkie.
Yeah, no, seriously. I feel like Red Bull has been overly generous in how they've treated Checo. And this, I don't think they would have done this to other drivers in the past.
Kvyat tapped Sebastian after the previous weekend being on the podium and was kicked out. They've flicked people for less. Albon and Gasly. Gasly's performance was not as poor as Perez's was.
No, yeah.
The only reason why I think they might be keeping him is they might just wait till after the Mexican Grand Prix, because that would be a bit of an awkward situation. If you went into the, I don't know if Red Bull will make it out. They're pretty patriotic towards Checo.
I mean, they are incredibly patriotic towards Checo. He obviously is a massive figure.
And if you haven't listened to the mariachi version of the F1 theme song, you are not living.
It's incredible.
The fact that race gets its own mariachi theme, it's so sick.
I mean,
mad side note.
The Mexican Grand Prix,
it's a whiles away.
It's
a whiles away. No, he's not. He's not going to be in the seat. I'm just saying it's going to be an awkward weekend.
There's no way it's not going to happen.
It's the weekend where you and your wife are divorced, but you're still going to grandma's house with the kids. It's awkward. No one's going to say anything, but everyone's going to know.
Yeah, I've got some folks in my life. So that's the reality. And there's some maneuvering that has to happen to Red Bull will need to maneuver a bit in Mexico if Checo's not on the team. I'll say that much.
Oh, 100%.
Okay, so Danny Rick, Liam Lawson are testing. Why isn't Yuki part of the testing? We've already talked about this, but do you think his performance deserves him to have a say, hey, guys, why don't I get a chance to test?
I think that's a great question. I don't think he'll get the seat because of exactly what I've said before.
Yeah,
right, wrong. It's marketability. I don't think he's the Red Bull brand. I think Lawson and Daniel wrote the brand guide for Red Bull. He was the crazy, outlandish, the honey badger, jumping into all this kind of stuff, the party animal. He wrote the book of Red Bull Bad Boy. And so he is to the drivers what Christian Horner is to team owners. There's a je ne sais quoi about Daniel Ricciardo and Red Bull, and that's why Horner loves him. And Liam has that potential.
Max doesn't fit into that.
No, but Max has the results, so it doesn't really matter.
And
so. And Max actually does bring I would say Max does bring his own air of bad boy.
Well, he's ruthless.
Yes.
Yeah.
Disruptive. I think that's what Red Bull loves. They love to be disruptors. And so, and Max is disruptive. And so I think Liam could have an essence of that based on performance. I guess the surprise to me is at least include Yuki in the shootout. Yeah. Why isn't it Ricardo, Liam, and Yuki?
Yeah, I mean, on performance, Yuki could easily say, hey guys, I'm way outperforming Danny.
Significantly.
I outperformed Liam. And again, we've already talked about how he wouldn't be a good fit. We don't feel like he'd be a good fit. But at the same time, I think if you're Red Bull, maybe they're just being honest about the fact that, hey, Yuki, you're not going to ever be in a Red Bull seat.
100%.
This is not the case. So why would we include you in the shootout? Maybe they're skipping a step and saying we're not going to have you in the shootout and then like have your expectations think that you maybe get this.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's either Danny Rick or it's Liam Lawson.
I think it'll be Danny Rick, and I think they'll put Liam because I think Helmut will see more of a future in Liam, and so he'll want to give Liam more time again at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the one piece about the Visa Cash App RB, team is that it is meant to develop drivers.
Correct.
Danny,
he's developed.
He's overdeveloped.
He's overdeveloped.
He's overcooked. It's like you just kind of, at this point, Yuki doesn't really need to be coached or mentored. Like he's beating Danny.
Yes.
But if Danny is that bad boy disruptor, and you want to give him the rest of the season, then I think it makes sense to just put him in the Red Bull.
To me, Yuki is performing so well. However, I think he is in Red Bull's eyes, he is a placeholder until I can take a risk on someone that I think will do better than him. So Yuki will hold and get the points and build the team while they're waiting for their next Max Verstappen, their next Kimi Antonelli, their next Ollie Berman.
Red Bull, do they have anyone in the pipeline besides Liam?
There's a couple people in their pipeline.
That's like
they've got a couple
level.
People.
I know Mercedes.
They've got one. I forget his name, but there's one.
Okay, I know Mercedes is fawning over this 17, 18-year-old Kimi.
He was there. He was on TV all weekend. You saw him right next to Pete Boddington. He looked like a little 14-year-old. Irritating him, like poking him in the podium ceremony.
Out of here!
Oh, go away! My driver's leaving a Ferrari next year. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see what.
He's like,
what
I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be a Ferrari, bro.
It's like I'm going to be in red next year, dude. Good old Bono.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what will happen there. I don't think Checo will be in the seat. I believe that it'll be Ricciardo, and I think it'll be Ricciardo's. This is it. Perform or bust. Because they have plenty of choices.
They do. But there's only one Danny. God.
There's only one Danny.
It was a lonely F1 without him.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it wasn't really that long. He was still there. But
the play I think that could happen, I don't know if Sainz would go for this, is they might try to string Sainz along and say, hey, we're going to give another driver a chance, but if they don't perform, we'll give you 2025. So if Danny doesn't perform in 5 races, we'll lock you in for 2025. If I were Christian Horner, that's what I would do.
If I were Sainz, and it was either that or like the doldrums of Williams,
or worse, Alpine, which is the other one that he's linked to at the moment.
God, terrible choices. Can we just shift to Alpine for a second?
No, we're not going to shift to Alpine because that's going to finish the entire episode. Let's talk about McLaren first.
Okay. Wait. So we haven't talked about Max yet. Anything
Max had a great weekend.
He couldn't pass though.
The surprising part about this weekend is that the last 2 years, Max's favorite course is Spa. That's his favorite track.
He's half Belgium.
He was born there.
Yeah.
And so he performs really well there. He's taken penalties in the form of engine penalties over the last 2 years and won from past 11th place.
Back or something like that?
Yes. Like last year, I think he was like 14th or 13th or 12th. I can't remember. And he, within like 10 or 15 laps, he was leading the race.
Yeah,
and
it was
gone.
Stunningly quick.
It was
But also
it was
last
incredible.
year, he won every race but one race.
Yes. It was unreal what happened and what he has done at that track. And honestly, based on the pace that we saw through free practice 1 and 2, we thought that was going to be the...
Oh,
we thought that was going to be it. And then he qualified on pole.
Yeah.
We thought that was going to be it.
I was like, oh, he's going to win.
The issue with Spa is that, first and foremost, they shortened the DRS zone by 75 meters this year, which means that they have less time to build up that speed to overtake. Because last year it was too easy to overtake. And then this year, everyone put super thin, skinny wings on, so that when people opened up the DRS, nothing happened. Because there was no wing there anyway. So you're not getting this crazy differential between like a high downforce wing that then opens up and just you shoot forward on the straight.
Yeah.
And so we just had these massive DRS trains.
Well, it was like
and no one could do
8
anything.
We're within like 9 seconds of each other,
which sounds awesome, except they didn't move.
No.
It was boring.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, there was such limited overtaking. And here's the bummer of it. Last year, obviously, you could say the DRS, it was too long. But also, I mean, Max was just dominating.
Yes.
The field is so much tighter this year.
Yes.
I wish they would have kept DRS, because then you would see Ferrari and Mercedes and McLaren and Red Bull all passing each other. You'd actually see overtakes among the top 4 teams because they all had the pace to do it.
Yeah.
They didn't have the pace to do it this time.
I just don't know if that's going to happen at Spa, because like we talked about, there's 4 braking zones. The rest of the track is flat out.
Yeah.
So it's the longest track, but no, you're not passing other F1 cars when you're flat through the corners on the accelerator. You're not doing
possible.
it.
Yeah.
You pass them when they mess up the braking zone,
Mm-hmm.
or when they mess up their acceleration coming out of the
or on the
zone,
straight if you've got DRS,
which there wasn't enough of. And so there was no opportunity for them to do what they needed to do. And here comes in the hard part of these old F1 tracks. They're incredible. Like, I would give my left foot to drive at Spa.
How would you drive without a left foot, though?
I would figure it out.
That's
a bloody stump just pushing down. It would be amazing. But these F1 cars are too fast for this track. They're not able to race properly through here. And so you go, like, you look at Jeddah, or you look at some of these newer tracks that are made for racing. 2021, how many overtakes and corners were Max and Lewis fighting one another? Why? Because it was a track built for these cars. It was built to enable them to race. These tracks were built for racing when the cars were a certain way. They're far from that way now.
Yeah. And again, I mean, these tracks are incredible. They're historic. They're beautiful. I mean, all those things. But I mean, not to compare Spa to Monaco or something like that. But again, there are these historic tracks, and we don't have historic cars anymore.
Yeah. But that's another, it's a high speed Monaco. And we're going to go to Monza, the temple of speed. And it's going to be the same thing. Yeah. People are going to strip the downforce off of their cars. They're going to be crazy slippery in a fast line. And we're not going to see great racing. It's beautiful. It's Italy, our favorite place. But
going there next year.
It is not going to create and produce great racing. Spa is unique, because the thing about Spa is that it becomes an incredible race weekend when there's weather.
Oh, yeah.
But when there's not weather on the race day, it doesn't. And then when there's too much weather, then the race just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And so
like we can't see.
It's a crazy track. And it's also throughout history, it has brought us some of the most amazing races.
Yeah. I mean, it's phenomenal. We need to go there.
Okay.
Eventually.
Done.
Here. McLaren.
Lando.
Oh,
McLaren.
Lando, you asked a question before we started. I'm going to ask you it because I think you may have a response here. Lando has this thing, and you're highlighting this, where when he's leading or he's on pole, he can't keep it. Or when he's starting a race, he loses places.
I mean,
Today he lost places.
Is it again. A thing? I don't know. But data doesn't lie.
Data
a good friend of mine says.
Data does not lie. Data tells a story.
This season,
he lost like 3 places at the start. I was like, Lando, you're in a McLaren.
Yeah, he dropped from P4 to P6 in this race, and that was after. Then he got bumped to P5, I guess, because of the disqualification of Russ.
Yeah,
he ran wide at La Source in lap 1, dipped his rear wheels into the gravel, and fell all the way down to P7. He recovered to P6. He had a bit of a tussle with Carlos, which actually was some fun racing to watch.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
watched. I looked up from the onboard. It was.
Carlos
They go
Sainz.
so fast. I don't know how they think that quickly. It's
That is
insane.
insane. Yeah.
And then he spent the second half of the race frustrated and pissed off, sitting right behind Max Verstappen.
Oh, he was like 0.6 seconds and couldn't overtake. I was like, well, this isn't good.
Yeah. He said this, turn one ruined my chances of everything. I felt a bit stupid, honestly, almost embarrassing. It actually was embarrassing. I couldn't even get close to Max. A bit frustrating that I couldn't make any more progress. Lando's day went from promising to a brutal reality check faster than you can say Eau Rouge. It was
very nice.
It was an interesting thing that I'm starting to see with Norris because there's a theme that's developing.
What's this theme?
Can he hang at the front? Take all the cars away.
Take all the cars away.
He will be right up there on qualifying pace with Charles Leclerc. But when the racing is happening, when the pressure is on, it's either I didn't nail the start and that's why I lost the race. Yeah. And that's why Oscar won.
Yeah.
I went off and I made a stupid mistake. It's embarrassing. I dipped my wheel in the gravel. My thought is this. Lando started this season, ended last season, the clear captain of McLaren.
Absolutely.
With McLaren's support behind him in that way. Now we have a season where by the end of this, he could be even, if not behind, his teammate of Piastri. And the question then goes to, is he now the team leader, or are we looking at a power shift within McLaren?
That is such a great question. I'm really glad you brought it up. I'll say this, there's a few things that tell a story. Data is one of them. The second thing, though, which is almost as powerful, if not more powerful, is the narratives we tell about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We tell our own story.
Yes.
And Lando this season, and almost to the point where folks in the F1 world are like, Lando, you're being too hard on yourself. You're telling a story about yourself that's almost too defeatist.
Oh, he's a sad boy.
It is, where it's just like every race, he's like, I should have won that. We should have won that. I made a mistake.
I guess I can't say anything. It was my fault.
It's like, and there's legitimately at this point 4 races, multiple races he should have won, where legitimately he should have won, and for one reason or another, whether it was not being able to handle the pressure, whether it was a mistake, a strategy error, he didn't win. And now the narrative is shifting where he's starting to believe it.
Yes.
And I think you see him believe
That's
it
interesting.
when he loses 2-3 places at the start. Well, then it matches the narrative he's already been talking about this entire season. And so obviously the outlier is Miami when he won, but every other race since then, he either has been in contention or he should have won. And then last week when he has to swap, it reinforces that again, where it's like, well, I lost it at the first turn. Piastri got in front of me, and so I didn't deserve to win. Well, hang on a second. You were 5 seconds ahead going into the last couple laps.
Yeah.
So I think the story he's telling about himself is really powerful, and it's shaping his psyche. It's shaping how he shows up on track. And Piastri, okay, right now, Max is first with 277. Lando's second with 199. Chuck's third with 177. Piastri's fourth with 167. This guy is 32 points back from Lando.
It's crazy.
He is not that far back. It is absolutely conceivable that Piastri, who has been on a
and Chuck will keep dropping. If Ferrari doesn't pick it up, Chuck's dropping like a stone.
Piastri, I think in the next race, passes Chuck. Unless Ferrari turns something around, he's only 10 points back.
Yeah.
And Ferrari's form has not been that great. So, but this is really fascinating. In the last 4 races, toe-to-toe, it's been Piastri 3 of those. Now, again, I'm accounting for the race where they had to swap. But Piastri beat him at turn 1, right? So I think it's the data that tells a story, but it's also us. We tell our story. And Lando's been telling a pretty sad story this season. a pretty disappointing, a pretty frustrated story this season.
Yeah.
And it's showing up on the track now.
Yeah. I do think there's like there is a certain amount of belief you have to have in yourself. I think there's a healthy amount of self-awareness that I think
you've got to be honest with yourself.
Well, and I think Lando, to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I gravitate towards him as one of my, favorite drivers, is that he is less of the Fernando Alonso, Max Verstappen type of like, no, I am perfect and everyone else is wrong. But maybe he needs a little bit of that. Like maybe he's too far on the other end of the spectrum.
Last week was a chance for him to get a little bit of that.
If he had just gotten the grit, I'm still in that. I'm still in that.
He should have.
Yeah, 100%.
Here's what I think that is. Leadership is just disappointment. It's disappointing others at a rate that they can absorb. So Lando in that moment last week, when he's 5 seconds ahead, he needs to lead in that moment and say, McLaren, boss, all y'all, I'm second place. I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm going to reiterate, I'm not going for constructors. I'm going for the drivers' championship. These points matter. I'm going to lead in this moment. And yes, you'll all be disappointed. Yes, we're going to talk about it. Yes, there might be some awkwardness or some frustration, but I'm going to lead you. I'm your lead driver.
Yes.
I'm going to lead you. And he didn't do it.
Or unplug your headphones, and when they say radio check, just don't respond. And then pretend to press the talk button on the radio so they can see it on the radio that you're trying on the cameras. Do something that makes you look like, no, this guy is going to give everything and every ounce of his being to become a world champion.
Yes.
And I don't care if Oscar deserves this win. He can come and grab it from me because I'm in front right now. And if he can't catch me, then he's not getting these points.
But this is the challenge, is it goes back to, it reinforces this sad boy narrative, this defeatist narrative, where it's like, well,
it's a victim mentality.
It's a victim mentality. And it's like, you're an F1. Let's snap out of it.
Step it up. And unfortunately, that's not the case. But let's go to the other side of the garage. Piastri. What a hero. Honestly, the guy.
This guy, did you hear what he did after he won? He's like, well, a couple of us flew back and we got McDonald's. And I wasn't really sure what kind of like things were being sold at like a McDonald's in Hungary. So I got like a Big Mac and like some chicken nuggets. And I was like, you are a child. And then he's like,
they're all children.
And then he's like, and then I flew back home and I like saw my girlfriend like 5 a.m. And so we like snuggled a bit. And then like I like got back on a plane and like I left. And I was like,
the guy is a legend. This
guy gets his first win and then he goes ahead and has McDonald's.
He's honestly so culturally Australian too. Like,
I mean, you would know.
I was born there.
Yeah.
He was just kind of like, went back home, saw my girlfriend, said what's up, hopped back on a plane. To be honest, I was pretty knackered. I had to go get on a flight to come here and race again. I think it'll be a good weekend. Car's pretty awesome. Yeah, it'll be fine. She'll be right, mate. Like, he's just so laid back. He's so chill.
Oh, dude. I mean, and here's the thing about this whole narrative piece. You don't see him telling this kind of doom and gloom narrative.
No.
That Lando's
matter of fact
telling. He's very matter of fact. He's very chill. He's not like a hype guy. And yeah, like he's honest.
Mm-hmm.
But he's honest in kind of this, I don't know if plucky's the right word, but like this optimistic kind of way where he's just like, yeah, this is where we're at. Like we're, okay. And like he doesn't take himself too seriously when he wins.
Right.
Which means he doesn't take himself too seriously when there's a mistake.
Right.
And I think Lando like is just in the doldrums when there's a mistake. And he takes himself so seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, like how he responds when he wins is like how you would expect someone to respond. But yeah, it's interesting. I feel like Piastri is hunting Lando down. And I think we've got a race in our hands for who is that kind of maybe unspoken lead driver at McLaren.
Yeah, 100%. I want to highlight a little bit of what Lando Norris said over the last interview that he did in the pen. He was asked if he was surprised at Mercedes' pace. And he then said, Not really. I think I'm paraphrasing here. I think most people are underestimating Mercedes. If you look at the last few races, they've been as fast, if not faster than us. I guess my question to you is Mercedes the new underdog? Is this true?
Well, I mean,
should we data this?
Not being a broken record, but looking at the data, Mercedes, the last couple races. So let's do this real quick. When did they turn it around? Was it Canada? I think it was Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So Canada, prior to Canada, I'm just going to do Miami, Imola, and Monaco. They were 6th and 8th, 6th and 7th, 5th and 7th. Since Canada, they have not dipped below 4th, except for Hungary when Russell was 8th, which was kind of a weird one-off. But Canada, they were 4th and 3rd. Spa, 3rd and 4th. Austria, 1st and 4th. British Grand Prix, 1st. Obviously DNF, but that was poor, mechanics. Hungary, 3rd and 8th. Belgium, 1st and 2nd. They've had podiums the last 6 races.
Yeah. I mean, McLaren's had podiums every race, though.
But Mercedes had a car that they were lost.
Mm-hmm.
They found the North Star. We didn't believe them.
No, I didn't believe them. I'm a Mercedes fan.
I didn't believe them. But here's the thing. I don't believe Mercedes has actually fully tapped the pace of that car.
Ooh.
I think there's still more development that they can do. Red Bull's tapped out. It's
a little embarrassing at this point.
They brought upgrades, and then we're like, wait, were those supposed
They
to
brought
be
everything
faster?
to the first race.
Was that supposed
and
to
then
be
they
faster?
lost Adrian Newey, and then all of a sudden they're like, why can't we develop anymore?
Adrian doesn't matter.
We've been building a team around this for the last 2 years. We don't build our business on one person, but when the one person leaves,
and
everything falls apart.
All the other people on his team were like, well, what about us, guys? And they were like,
the CEO of Ford is probably calling Christian every day going like, hey, what's going on, man?
Stop kidding yourself. Adrian was your guy. He was the demigod, and he's gone. Day. So here's the thing. Red Bull, their pace on that car is pretty much at its max right now. McLaren, I think they've developed pretty intensely, and I think they can still extract some pace. Ferrari, I don't know where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
They brought upgrades, and then it went all sideways and south since Monaco. But Mercedes, there is still development. They have not reached the ceiling of development for that car. So I do think that they are the new underdogs in the sense that they're fighting.
Yeah.
And they're not fighting just because they're Mercedes and they should fight. It's no, they have a car and they have a North Star now. And that car can still be developed. It can still get faster.
Yeah. I think the difference between Mercedes and McLaren at the moment is that McLaren arguably probably has the fastest car on the grid.
Yeah.
Mercedes would say themselves, and most other teams would say that they are not the fastest on the grid. However, Mercedes knows what it means to win. Mercedes knows what it takes to win.
They have that muscle memory.
They have it. McLaren, it has been a long time since they have fought in the top echelons of Formula One.
Yeah.
Mercedes, you can see, albeit there was the weight issue this last weekend. But strategy-wise, the way that they allowed their racers at the end of those laps to, hey, guys, make sure you don't get too close. Let's race safe.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
In 1 and 2.
Team morale
phenomenal.
Boosted.
Yeah.
Drivers happy. I'm going to win this on my own. I'm not going to get ordered back. I'm not going to get ordered forward. I'm going to go after this. Exactly.
Yeah.
They know how to play the game at this level.
They do. And I think that is the one difference we've seen this season because, yes, Mercedes made a mistake today that cost Russell P1. McLaren arguably has had multiple strategy errors in races they could have and should have won.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been multiple errors that were team errors. Yeah, Lando would own most of them, but there was genuinely team errors where they should have won and they didn't. And so
Yes.
I think that's where Mercedes, it's just who they are. They know how to be at the front. They know how to dominate. They know how to win. McLaren is having to relearn that, because McLaren did at one point. No one who's there now was probably part of their really winning days in the past. So they're having to relearn that.
Yeah.
They've got an incredibly quick car. They've got incredibly quick drivers, but you're seeing driver error under pressure. You're seeing team strategy error under pressure. And yeah, McLaren last week had a 1-2, and there was all of this tension because of their call, and they didn't let their drivers race.
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes had a 1-2, and they're like, yeah, go for it.
Exactly.
And I think that's the difference.
It is the difference. And you got to cut McLaren some slack, because even Red Bull, leading in the Mercedes dominant era, they were always right behind Mercedes. They were always fighting in that top area, and you had Ferrari trying to catch up and kind of nipping at the heels, but never quite there.
Yeah.
And then you fast forward to 2021, and they eased into what it feels like to not just have a driver fighting for it, but also for them to be really close in the constructors championship.
Yep.
You kind of just slingshotted McLaren into it.
Oh, yeah,
and said, hey, go from being the top of the midfield to and having some pretty good results sporadically through some scrappy, like, technical kind of dodgy calls, but now we're going to put you where you have to consistently deliver week after week after week, or you will lose all of it. And they're kind of fumbling around a little bit, like reaching for the light switch in the dark, and the other teams are kind of looking at them going like, I've been here before. I know what this is like. I know what plays we need to run. I know how to manage my drivers, manage my team, manage the engineers, and all of it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think McLaren, they still have some learning to do. So while Mercedes car, there's still pace in that car to be developed, I think in McLaren, there's still room for growth.
Yes, 100%.
In their strategy, in how they fight at the front.
Yeah.
Because their car's there, their drivers are there. They all need to be there.
Correct.
And honestly, I think you just learn that by practice.
Yeah.
Every race, whether you win, whether you're on the podium, whether you lose because of a bad strategy call, it's muscle memory.
I mean, arguably, Oscar could have been much closer to Hamilton today had he not himself missed his marks on that pit stop. I mean,
he almost straight took his front guy out.
Yes. They said the car stopped because of that guy.
I mean, that guy literally absorbed so much of
the impact. That's insane.
I was like, his back's probably just
I'm like, he can't walk. And then it cuts to him like laughing in the garage. I'm like, bro,
oh yeah, that's
your adrenaline is going to wear off in about 2.5 hours and you're going to be on your back.
Do you think they have workman's comp in that role?
I don't know. I was just coming after that guy, though.
That's just literally in the contract you might die. You can't sue
exactly. Yeah. You could be cut in half by a front wing of Lando Norris's car. But let's move on from McLaren and let's talk about Ferrari. What do you have to say about Ferrari this weekend, Ben?
Besides the fact that they were just, I'm trying to think of an analogy of like someone, having a surprise result and just being kind of like, hey, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
Like, didn't expect to be here, just kind of happy to be here. Chuck, when he's P1, is like, oh, wow,
this is cool.
This is great. Like, I guess we're fast again. Ferrari's had an interesting kind of funky run of form. We talked about Chuck after Monaco. He kind of had this reverse curse where he's just had such a struggle. They feel a little lost.
Yeah.
And so I think pole was surprising. I didn't expect Chuck to win. I'm like, they don't have the pace for that.
No.
And obviously they ended in, he ended in third, but again, he would have ended in fourth.
Right.
And Sainz ended in 6th, but he would have ended in 7th.
And they took a chunk of points, for sure.
And they took a chunk of points, which was great for them. But Ferrari, they had these new upgrades that didn't work out.
Correct.
And they're lost trying to figure it out. And so they started the season hot. They have lost second place to McLaren. And now Mercedes is hot.
So are they this season's what Aston Martin was to the 2023 season is Ferrari to the 2024 season, where they started hot and they just fading? Like, will they be able to figure this out?
I think Hamilton hopes to God they figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. We're already at the halfway point. We're in the summer break. You can't work in the summer break.
Factories shut down for 3
everything's shut down. So it's just like you're going to have to come back into the next race, which is Netherlands.
Yep.
Max's
backyard.
Win that one.
He's going to rip.
He's got a new engine, and he's just going to go off. They're not going to get anywhere close to winning that one. So, I mean, it's quite possible they are Aston from last year, where they started hot and they couldn't maintain development. And then with how competitive McLaren is, with how competitive Mercedes is, I fully anticipate it to be McLaren and Mercedes fighting for, P2 at this point.
I mean, Max hopes that Ferrari pulls it together, because right now the only thing that's giving him his 4th world championship in a row is the fact that Norris keeps losing points to the other teams that are nipping at McLaren right now. And so it's all a bit of a dogfight behind him. Yeah. And he's trying with everything he has to stay ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it works out for him right now because these other teams have all found pace.
Yep.
And so McLaren and Mercedes are taking it out of each other, which works for Red Bull at this point. McLaren, if they can continue to land points like they've been landing, have the potential to catch Red Bull in the constructors. I don't think Mercedes has the potential to catch Red Bull. They're too far back, but they absolutely have the opportunity to catch Ferrari.
Yeah.
And so, I think Ferrari is
I think it depends. I think it depends. I think it would be a long shot, but Mercedes, remember, there's a lot of races left.
Yeah. Was this 14 or 15?
This is 14. This was race 14.
We have 10 left.
So we have 10 races left, and we have possibly a brand new Red Bull driver. And even if we don't, we have Checo in the other seat. And so Max can't.
Huge roll the dice.
We're past the point where Max can win this championship on his own.
Yeah, no, he can't do that.
And Max and Lando are not racing pretty with each other at the moment. And so we're not past the point of Monza level Lewis and Max moments where we could see people that are outside of that initial battle getting those points. And unlike that year, there's no teammate to back up Red Bull at the moment.
Yeah.
No one has that. I would say about Ferrari is that they feel like Forrest Gump without any of the wins. They don't win any of the races that they run in. The businesses that they start, Bubba Gump Shrimp never gets off the ground. The stock that they invest in never quite goes anywhere. And so the story just kind of falls flat.
Yeah, they don't feel like themselves. I'm wanting there to be more energy around Ferrari right now, and it doesn't feel that way.
No. I want us to go into the rest of this season with those 4 teams fighting, because I think that is providing some of the best Formula One that we've seen in many years.
Absolutely.
I actually can't remember a time where we saw 4 different teams any given weekend that could be a winner. And that's what we want. That's what we desire.
It's almost half the grid.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a couple of things that happened. I mean, we're not going to talk about Kick. We're not going to talk about Williams.
No.
We're not going to talk about... I mean, Danny Rick got in the points.
Give us something to talk
Danny
about.
Rick got in the points.
10th,
so that's
right?
exciting.
Great. And he's going to be testing Red Bull next week. Or this week.
With Lawson. Great. Okay, so we talked about them.
Awesome.
Okay, let's talk Alpine. So they came into this weekend thinking that their Deadpool Wolverine livery on their car was going to distract from the fact that they yet again have taken the opportunity at the Spa Grand Prix to change leadership. Bruno Famin, after the summer break, will no longer be the team principal of F1 Alpine Renault.
Well, here's my tension with this, because obviously this team loves to just, change the top leadership, hoping and praying that it's going to actually have some type of impact on their race pace and on the race performance, which it doesn't. But also, if you're the ones who are making these decisions and you're looking at the dreadful, abysmal performance, what choices are you making? Do you keep Bruno in when your team is literally only beating Williams with 4 points and Kick with 0?
Yeah.
Haas has your number now.
Yeah.
Haas, they were 10th last year. They now have more than double your points. RB is way ahead of you now. Like, it would be a miracle if you could catch Haas by the end of the season because of how rare points are. So if you're, the board or whoever the heck makes these decisions, do you just say, we tried it, didn't work out? Or do you realize that I don't know where the problem is?
That's the problem with Alpine.
There's
is that
so many problems.
They don't know where the problem is.
It's death by a million paper cuts.
It's death by a million corporate suits is what it is. Here's the problem with Alpine is that the PR person that told them the first time, you know what we need to do? We need to fire the head person, show that we're serious, we're shaking it up, and then we're going to get the results and everyone's going to call us a genius. Well, if it works, yes.
They were
problem.
They were 6th last year with 120 points.
The problem is it hasn't worked.
Never.
And you can't do it for a third time and expect it to work. They did it. They brought in Otmar. They fired Otmar. They brought in Bruno. And now they're letting Bruno move over to another area and possibly giving up their engine manufacturing part of their entire wing.
Which is stunning.
Which is incredible. And so, look, Bruno Famin is Alpine's jack of all trades. So as he steps down from his F1 team role, the guy's got enough other roles within the Alpine business.
Yeah.
Like his portfolio is huge. So it makes sense. The problem is that it's not going to fix anything.
No, we've been going back and forth the last couple of weeks. You have been convinced they are going to rise once again to the midfield champions.
They are going to have a prolific rise. They will have a prolific rise to mediocrity because that is where Alpine lives. Is in the mediocre
mediocrity though.
They will be in the middle. They will be in the. They won't be as bad as
Aston's in the middle.
Yes, they will
RB's
be.
RB's in the middle.
They'll be up in that area. They're not going to be. They will be. They will be steps ahead of Williams. They'll be steps ahead of Kick. They will be significantly above them.
No, they're the bottom 3. They're at the back of the pack. They're not in the middle. They're not going to get to the middle. You know who's in the middle? Haas is in the middle. RB's in the middle. Aston's in the
Just
middle.
watch. They had some pretty good pace this weekend. Just watch. Just like that. I'm telling you, they will be in the middle and Kick will get a point. Those two things kind of contradict each other. But at the root of this, there are rumors flying around that one of the F2, F3 bosses named Oliver Oakes will be taking over the role and the helm of Alpine. There are also rumors that they're going to no longer be their own engine supplier.
Aren't there rumors that Andretti and his company might buy them? Or is that
loosely. That either the high tech is so Oliver Oakes, he leads the F2 and F3 high tech team, which is like their version of any one of the F1 teams. And it's said that maybe high tech would possibly purchase it from Alpine because Alpine stepping back as your own engine manufacturer is the wrong move to make. It's the wrong message to send. Number one, there's 500 people working on the 2026 engine, and that would be the department that Bruno's taking over to then focus them on creating the 6 different Alpine models to the public that they want to create to worldwide that are going to be powered by hydrogen, which is like saying, We're trading out F1 engine for a Prius. What are you doing? But at the same time, they're picking up possibly Mercedes as an engine manufacturer. So then you're Alpine powered by Mercedes.
Yeah, that's tough.
Which people are saying,
well,
but you can make Aston Martin powered by Mercedes, Aston Martin powered by Honda. What's the difference there? You have McLaren, which is an engine and car manufacturer powered by Mercedes. So what's the difference there? Well, the difference is that Renault is France. It is the actual country. It is not separate. Alpine was Renault at one point in time. Just like Mercedes is Mercedes. Just like Ferrari is Ferrari. Yes. Red Bull was never its own engine manufacturer until recently, which then now is changing. And so it just, there is no comparison. To me, you can't have Renault without a Renault engine.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense because it is so intimately connected to the people, the place, and to Renault. It is, we talked about this last week, where Ferrari is Italy.
Yes.
You can't say we're going to have Ferrari powered by Mercedes.
Exactly.
It doesn't work, right? So I'm interested if they decide to go that route. I think with Alpine right now, they're just desperately trying to, switch all the switches and figure out what is going to help them in their rise to mediocrity. Because right now they're in an uncomfortable place. They've never been this far back. Not in recent years.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. They're usually in the middle. They've even been up to fourth place.
And historically, this is when they step out of the sport. When they get to this point in history is when they step out.
In the bottom. I mean, 11 points through the first half.
The interesting,
that is abysmal.
One of the things that happened when Renault bought Lotus was
this is way back.
This is way back when they entered back in again. They bought Lotus, and Lotus was actually doing pretty well. So they kept the car. The car was essentially the same. The one thing that they changed was the engine, and their results plummeted.
I wonder why.
Are we looking at a car manufacturer that just cannot hang? My thought is, are they bringing in high tech to eventually just sell to high tech or to sell to Andretti? And are we looking at in 2 years, we won't have Renault, we won't have Alpine, we will have a different team?
I mean, if there's any team at this point who is looking that way, it is Alpine. Their first half of the season it's been catastrophic. I think that's the only way to put it. When you were best of the rest a couple seasons ago, when you were ruling the midfield last year to barely scraping by, you are averaging less than a point a race so far. 1 point a race, less than that.
It's not a good trajectory.
It's not a good trajectory, and it is just absolutely catastrophic. So
the bar graph is not inspiring.
No. I mean, and you're getting surpassed by teams that you handily beat last year. So yeah, I mean, it feels like they're getting to a point, and they had all this infusion of new money.
Yeah,
they had all this.
Ryan Reynolds is pissed.
I mean, God, it's just a bad investment. Sometimes you win, Wrexham. Sometimes you lose, Alpine. It's just what 100%. Happens with your investments. But I think they're posturing probably for a sale if this continues.
Yeah.
If they continue to average 1 point or less than 1 point a race, they're going to end the season with 20 points.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's sustainable in F1 these days. It's not.
It will be a crazy.
It's like Christian Horner saying we can't sustain one driver who's winning and one driver who's placing in 7th and 8th. Alpine, they can't sustain this.
And of course, this entire conversation is null and void because they will be at the mid-pack by the time this season ends, according to
You're going to owe me so much money.
According to me. I don't owe you any money for
You're
that
gonna
one.
owe me
I will
so
owe you
much
money
money.
for kick. I have a feeling I will owe you at least
You're gonna owe me so
$30
much.
for kick.
You're gonna owe me so much.
Valtteri, please get me 1 point. Just one. Give me a half a point
It's
in
not
the middle of a race with a bunch of rain. Like, give me a half point. I don't
feel
care.
like there may be a race where like there's a massive crash.
Yes.
And Valtteri's so far back, that's where they live, that he's going to somehow miss it all. And I'm just going to be screaming at the TV that it's not fair. That's the only way they're getting a point.
The Belgian Grand Prix. What a race. It was boring.
But it was also surprising. In the fact that Mercedes got a 1-2, that Ferrari
and then they got disqualified from.
And they got disqualified is all surprising.
And I will say that the championship is still on. And disqualification aside, Mercedes is back.
Oh, yeah. That is the one fantastic storyline that has emerged since Canada, is that Mercedes has, I believe them now. They've actually found the North Star.
They have found their North Star.
They've lied the last several years.
Agreed.
They were lying to us. They didn't find it. They have found it. And it's great to see a team like Mercedes so quickly turn it around.
Yes.
And say, we're back. We know how to do this. We know how to win. It's great.
They haven't let it go to their heads. They're calm. They're cool. They're collected.
Yeah.
And it will be something to see towards the end of the season how close they can get to McLaren and Red Bull.
Time will tell. We're going to be off for a couple weeks.
We're going to be off for a couple weeks. What's your prediction for the Grand Prix coming back after the summer break?
Well, Max took his 10th-place grid penalty so he could have a new engine going into his home race. If he hadn't had 10 grade penalty, he would have won today. He was on pole.
Yeah.
And he had an incredibly fast car. He got stuck up, trying to weave his way through. So, yeah, I mean, I think Max and Red Bull are going to win. And Max has not won since Spain.
That's big.
That's 5 races ago.
Big.
He is gunning. He is hungry. I think it's gonna be Max. I think it'll be Norris, Piastri.
Ooh.
And I think it'll be Hamilton. Hamilton's on a rip right now.
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton's on a rip. Mercedes is on a rip.
He's ripping.
And I think it'll be in that order. How about you?
Man, it's a tough one. It's hard to bet against Max. It's hard to bet against, especially at this track. I mean,
he's gonna pull it out.
The Orange Army will be out in full
with their
effect.
Bicycles, all 400,000,
and their little key locks and all their cute little things that they have over there in Europe. Yeah, I think Max will win. I think Lewis will be in second, and I think we will see Norris in third. I think Norris will come back from the break centered, and I think we will see a brand new driver in the Red Bull seat.
I think you're right.
That's all we have, friends. Thank you so much for joining us this week on F1 Rolling Start. I'm James.
I'm Ben.
Have a good night.
See you, folks.